Hi, I'm Emily Freitag, co-founder and CEO at Instruction Partners, and I'm so excited to be talking today to John Laven, who is one of the co-leaders of Snorkl, a product that I've been excited to see in action with kids and learn a lot about, a product I know a growing number of educators are using. So in all these videos, we're learning about the story of the leader, we're learning about what the product's aiming to do, how it feels and what they're working on improving, and what evidence they have of impact. So we'll dig right in. John, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. And why
Thank,
don't you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your journey, and then you can tell us about Snorkl.
yeah, thanks so much, Emily. Excited to join you. I brought my snorkel with too, so we can dive in. Um,
Uh,
yeah, my name is John. I'm one of the co-founders of Snorkel. I was a high school math teacher, and my co-founder Jeff was a fifth grade teacher. So both of us come from the classroom, and we started Snorkel originally around this idea of how do we capture student thinking in really rich ways. In 2022, I was still in the classroom and I was also an instructional coach. And Jeff, a good friend of mine, we had met teaching years ago, but he had called me up and he said he saw something interesting happening during the pandemic, during distance learning, which was that he had talked to a number of teachers who were having students record and explain their thinking from wherever they were doing their work at home and send that in as their homework. Um, and he asked me like what I thought about that idea and if there was teachers were using a variety of different tools to sort of mash that together and make that happen. Um, but there's something about that idea of students recording and explaining their thinking that was exciting to me immediately, I think, in the sense of as a math teacher, I wanted my math class to be not just about the answers, but about the student thinking process.
mhm,
Um, and so much of the conversation in math education for the last decade plus has been about how do we make math more about student creativity and student thinking and student communication. And yet, most of the math ed tech tools historically have been things where students put their final answer into a box.
mhm,
And felt like that sent the opposite message of what I wanted my math class to be about. And so that sort of started us on this path of building like what would it look like to capture student thinking in really rich ways? What would it mean if we actually allowed students to talk and explain their thinking? And then, of course, with the advent of AI, what were the opportunities created there?
mhm.
And one of the biggest opportunities was that we could instantly give students feedback and a score on these really rich responses on not just their answer, but on their strategy, on their vocabulary, on all these different things that teachers want to give feedback on. Turns out that that is an experience that's valuable not just for math class, but also for science class and ELA and world languages. And so Snorkel has sort of expanded from there,
Yeah,
but
excited to
really
hear
started with
about that.
that problem. Yeah.
And just in the land of your background, do you have any tech background? Like, is this your first time building a product,
I
or?
do not have any tech background. And in fact, I'm a little bit of a tech skeptic when it comes to the classroom, to be honest. And if you ask Jeff, he'll say like that's part of why he thought I was the right person to talk to when he was first starting to build. I've certainly dabbled with a variety of things in my classroom over the years. Um, but again, I think there's a danger in tech in the classroom that we can really reduce uh, our expected outputs for students, and we can actually, for the sake of efficiency, could actually ask less of our students, and our students are capable of so much.
Mhm,
And so I think that's what got me excited, pulled me out of the classroom to
mhm,
work on this full time eventually. Jeff had a rich background after he taught for a few years, and then he had been a software engineer for another 10
mhm.
years. So he had brought more of the tech background and experience.
Got it. Great. So tell us, what job is Snorkel trying to do?
Yeah, I think it's the core job is how do we capture student thinking in really deep ways? And I think the sort of extra layer here is how do we leverage AI in a way that gets our students thinking more and not less? Because I think that one thing AI is really good at, like I use AI, I use ChatGPT all the time to help me do things like write emails.
Mhm,
And it is really good at helping me think less about what I'm writing in that email.
mhm,
makes it more efficient. And I think our challenge as teachers is what our goal is not to get our students to think less, but to get our students to think more.
And so
Uh,
let's go into like practical use then.
yeah.
So where does this fit into a lesson? Give us the specs again on subjects, grade spans, and any of the core features of the design. And then tell us like how maybe it's multiple ways, maybe it's one way, but where does Snorkl fit into an actual lesson? A student sits down and then what?
Yeah. Yeah. Great questions. Can I share my screen and just
Yeah,
show
go
an
for it.
example of this?
Yep.
Great. Let me do that because I think that brings it to life a little bit more. So this is what a student activity looks like in Snorkel. Students see a question from their teacher. They see it on like a digital whiteboard space where they have different tools to respond and show their thinking. So students can draw and highlight and type out text. And then what makes Snorkel really special is when students are ready, they press this record button, they can talk and explain their thinking. And so here we're trying to find the width of this frame. And so I'd actually talk through, it's almost like a reverse Khan Academy. Instead of students watching SelCon solve a math problem, we're actually having students record and explain how they solve things or how they're interpreting a reading passage or how they're thinking about the text that they're reading in science or social studies or whatever the class is. So students talk through, they show, explain, I would share that I know this side is 29. I know opposite sides of a rectangle are equal. Maybe I'll try to add those together. And then when I'm done, I can submit my work and the AI will analyze both what I said and what I showed to give
Mm.
me feedback and a score. And so we're capturing not just their answer, but we're capturing their thinking process. Absolutely, yeah. So as I was explaining that,
Yeah.
so the AI was processing my voice and what I did on the screen there. Obviously, I didn't fully solve that problem, so it was not very impressed by my response. So I got it incorrect. I got a 1 out of 4. I got some praise though. Great start on correctly identifying that the length is 29 centimeters and the opposite sides of a rectangle are equal. So we're celebrating what's going right in their thinking already.
Yeah.
I can see you were thinking about adding the links together, but your explanation stops there. Can you walk through what you would do after adding 29 plus 29? And then you haven't provided a final answer yet. So students get immediate feedback. I think two things to notice about this feedback. One is we're going to celebrate student thinking, even if they're not getting all the way to the right answer. And two is we're not going to give them the answer. We're actually going to ask them questions about their thinking to support them to think deeper and to try again.
Got
And
it.
you'll
And I
notice,
see a respond again button at the top. Yeah.
yeah. And so a fun fact about Snorkel, on all the millions of student activities that students have submitted into Snorkel, the average activity is attempted 2.1 times.
Huh.
So in other words, more than twice. Like we're getting
Yeah.
really high response rates from students and trying again. I talk to teachers all the time who will say, my students are doing this multiple times without me asking them.
Yeah.
Um, I think our theory on that is twofold. One is, yeah, the immediate AI feedback is powerful. But I think the other piece of this is students feel so much ownership over their work when their voice is attached to it.
Yeah.
And so we see students get really excited and take ownership of that work and thinking
I
and use
was
that feedback.
struck by student like drum roll energy when they were entering their response and waiting for the reply when I saw this in action.
Yeah, yeah, students will sort of they'll get really excited about
They're
it.
motivated. Yeah.
I actually brought a student response to share, if that's okay, if I could play one. So this is an example of a third grader using Snorkel in the ELA activity, explaining his thinking. So I'd love to play it for you.
Okay, this is my question and I'll answer it for you simply. What is a verb? Now, a verb is like, like you wouldn't say, like, it's hard to explain, but like a verb, like, is an action word. It means like running. Running. Like the word running? That's a verb.
He's very cute. He also chose the highlighter, a classic third
You're
grade move
right.
there.
Now, here's question 2 right here. Hold on. Yeah. Which is the verb in the sentence? Every fall, Tala prepares for the Cabru with her family. The word prepare is she's preparing to do that. So, I will go into the little pen, circle that. It prepares because it's telling you she's preparing for that. And now, right here, question 3. Complete the sentence below with the correct tense of the verb hunt. So, the Inuit people of Alaska have caribou herds for many centuries. Have had have right. The people have. I'm pretty sure I would say had the correct tense, so it'd be the Inuit people of Alaska have had caribou herds for many centuries.
He's so close.
So close. So close.
What I love so much about that example is I think you hear a student who's like deeply engaged, who's taking ownership, who's using and attempting to use his academic vocabulary, who he gets immediate feedback, he gets some praise, great job explaining that the verb is an action word and giving running as an example. Perfect, you correctly identified prepares as a verb and explained that it shows what Tala is doing. And then this last piece, you seem confused about the missing word. Can you think about what form of the word hunt would fit in the sentence?
Okay, so reprompts. And just so I'm looking at the score correctly, incorrect, correct. Like he got incorrect because he didn't get the final answer, but he
Yep.
got a 3 out of 4. So those are different. They're not
Yep.
the same scoring. You can be correct and have a low explanation, or you can be incorrect and have a high explanation. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's something special here about like we're able to sort of tease apart and give more nuanced feedback because it's just the AI is doing this instantaneously on student responses.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thanks for showing us all of that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to how it's getting used.
Yeah.
Subjects, grade spans, and then where in a lesson is this happening?
Yeah, great questions. Yeah, so Snorkel is being used across K-12. We've got folks who are using it at their, lower elementary school classrooms to do things like counting or reading fluency. You can have students read a passage and get reading fluency feedback all the way through AP calculus. We have some folks on the college level who are using it in their college math, physics types of courses as well. So really broad range. We have a library of pre-built content across all subject areas and grade levels, all tagged to standards, both state and national standards. So teachers can choose from those, and then they can also put in their own curriculum. So they can actually put in their own questions on the whiteboard, have students respond, and get feedback to those as well. So as far as like where in the lesson, it's again the formative assessment practice. At the elementary school level, we often see it used as a station rotation around the room. We're seeing it used as a do first, or even as sometimes as homework or test prep.
Exit
Really-
tickets, does it get graded?
yeah, yeah. So we automatically score those student responses. Everything's scored on a 0 through 4 scale. Students get that feedback instantly. Um, and then teachers get insights into the class performance too, which is the other part of it.
Okay, so I'm hearing this is a very broad and flexibly used tool. Is that the right takeaway from what you just described?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's up to the teacher then typically to decide when and where they're going to use it, or do you see any schools or districts where they're saying everybody's going to do the Snorkel exit ticket on Tuesday?
Yeah, yeah, all those things above. So there's definitely a lot of schools and districts that are using it just like teachers are making decisions in their classrooms, and then there's some that are more prescriptive about it. We've done some interesting things recently with Durham Public Schools that has pushed out like district-wide formative assessment for their English language learners. In Snorkel, we've done some things. We were doing a pilot right now with Houston ISD where they're embedding Snorkel into their sort of their like intervention block
Mhm.
period that kids are doing every day. They're doing math activities in Snorkel. They're also doing writing activities in
Mhm.
Snorkel, which is a different activity type I haven't shown, but another way of snorkeling.
And you mentioned earlier foreign language. That perks up my ears just because we think
Yeah.
about the oral dimensions of learning a language and speaking and listening and just how important that is. Tell us about how it's used there.
Yeah, so we again have pre-created activities in the library, or teachers can put their own activities in there, but just that oral language practice and the ability for students to get instant feedback and really try multiple times, I think is the other real benefit there.
And
And
what's the
so,
range of dosage? Like, are some people using this once a month and other people are using it every day? Or
yeah,
is there a recommendation on that?
it's a great question. I think people are across the board. There are people who use it once a month, and there's people who use it every day. I would say our like power users are using it at least 3 times a week. Um, we are doing like as far as recommended dosage, like we're not overly prescriptive about that, but we are seeing teachers who are using it really consistently get really strong results. And we might get to this a little bit later, but we're actually doing a research study right now where we are encouraging folks to use it 3 times a day in their classroom. Not for the whole
Three
lesson.
times a week or three times a
Sorry,
day?
thank you. 3 times a week.
Okay.
Not the whole lesson. It is 10, maybe 15 minutes of the lesson. I think that's the other really important piece to us is like we think technology plays an important role in the classroom, but we also think there's so many other powerful things happening in the classroom, and Snorkel's not intended to replace the teacher. It's not intended to be the whole lesson. It's intended to be a tool that can supplement what a teacher's already doing really powerfully.
Great. What are the edges and what are the strengths you would say? Like when you talk to users, when you talk students as well as teachers, what are the things they're saying they value the most? And what are the things that you yourself are like, we're trying to make this part better?
Yeah. I think teachers are really excited about a few things. Teachers are really excited about their students talking through their thinking out loud. I think just the metacognition that activates and the language practice and all the
Mhm.
other benefits of that are really powerful. There's so many times where students are sharing their thinking and it's not the AI feedback that's correcting them, it's the process of explaining their thinking that they're
Mm.
catching their own mistakes.
Mhm.
Um, I think the other piece of this is the teacher insights. So on the teacher dashboard, all those student responses are automatically scored. We'll show
Mhm.
trends and summaries, and we'll highlight what are your top student responses in the class, what are the mistakes and errors that your students are making, and give teachers that information at a glance. Teachers can have conversations with that data. There's a lot of really rich insights we're able to provide, again, because we're not just capturing their answer, but we're
Yeah.
capturing the thinking process.
I'm struck by how flexible the use case is for students, and that makes me think that there's a lot of flexibility on how teachers are then using that dashboard as well.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think there's a number of things that we're excited about working on and building and expanding. Um, the the more pre-created content we have, the better. Teachers love it when they go in there and their content is already in there.
Like their
Uh,
curriculum that their district is using is already loaded.
Yeah, and so we have content across K-12, all subject areas. We also have some particular curriculum partnerships.
Hmm.
We have a partnership with Jump Math. We have a partnership with Illustrative Math.
Hmm.
We're working on some additional curriculum partners so that folks go in there and they find their content pre-created.
Hmm.
And then we're also working with district partners around supporting them and getting their curriculum materials in there as well, and
Hmm.
making that process really simple and seamless. Um, the power of the AI feedback is something we're always testing and improving. Uh, I would say like people feel really confident around using Snorkel and giving that feedback, and we are always collecting the edge cases to make sure that we are using the latest models to fix those situations where maybe the AI is misunderstanding or it's not quite matching the teacher's goals. I think
Meaning
the
like it gives the student a two, but the teacher would give it a four, and you're
Yeah, so
finding the difference
you
there.
know, 2 years ago, I would say that there were some gaps around what the AI could do,
Uh-huh.
like skill wise. Now, the bigger gap is, I would say, not the AI's power to do things. Like the
Yeah.
AI can consistently give feedback on the highest levels of math, science, social studies, whatever it is. Like it can AP calculus, no problem.
Yeah.
The bigger issue is, does the teacher's expectations for this assignment match what the
Hmm.
AI is looking for and giving feedback on? So, for example, I might ask a question around what were the causes of the Revolutionary War, and I might be doing that as a 4-minute warm-up activity,
Hmm.
or I might be doing that let's say like as a pre-think
Hmm.
before class, before we've talked about this, or I might be doing that same question at the end of a unit on
Hmm.
the Revolutionary War in AP, you know,
Hmm.
US history class. And so for the AI to know the nuance of like what is the teacher expecting,
Hmm.
that's where more often we're seeing a gap, and we're doing things to try to address that. So
Hmm.
we've recently added features for teachers to pre-select appropriate grade levels that they're aligning that content to. Eventually, we're going to add the ability for teachers to pre-align standards so that the content can be honed in on those as well. Um, and then teachers have the option always to manually, even now, they can manually adjust those criteria. So their power is there. I think the challenge
How
for
people
us
use
is,
it. Hmm.
yeah, the challenge for us is how we support people to use that power really well and
Yeah,
effectively and consistently.
super helpful. Let's end with impact. Like, what impact would you hope this product is having, defined however you want it to? And what have you seen so far against that vision?
Yeah. Uh, I mean, I hope that when you walk into a classroom where kids are using Snorkel, you get to hear and see 30 kids talking about their thinking, who are taking deep ownership. I think we see that in a lot of classrooms we visit, and the teachers will tell you that their students are growing a lot because of that experience. We were at the WIDA
Hmm.
Access conference in Seattle this last fall. A teacher came up to me. Um, she said I had the highest growth rate of WIDA Access students in the entire state of Hawaii last year. It was
Hmm.
thanks to Snorkel. I
Oh,
was like,
wow.
I had never met her before. I was really excited. Um, and I think we have teachers all over the country who have shared similar stories of their students feeling more confident in sharing their thinking in math class, of students doing better on their TELPAS or their WIDA, or their oral language assessments. Um, I think similar stories around students improving their writing practice, and the writing tool gives students iterative feedback on their writing. I was down in Northeast ISD in San Antonio last week or 2 weeks ago, and got to see some students using that writing practice, and they've seen their scores go up. So I think we're still relatively young, and collecting some of that more formal impact
Hmm.
uh, data. We're doing a study right now with New School Venture Fund around some math learning, and then we next school year we actually have a grant from the Gates Foundation to do some more impact research around
Hmm.
the impact that Snorkel is having. So that not specifically in math class, but again, people are using Snorkel across the board.
Thanks so much for sharing. I did get to see Snorkel in action, and I think I was at first stunned it even worked just because there were so many kids talking at the
Yeah.
same time, and it was like loud in an energized way, but the tech was working fluidly. And then I also was struck by how much excitement the kids had. Like after they hit enter, before it came up, there was a really notable sense of excitement to understand the response from Snorkel. And when they got it, they were like, high-fiving and feeling really awesome about their work.
Yeah, I love that. It doesn't take much gamification. I think
Mhm.
gamification is a phrase thrown around in ed tech space
Mhm.
a lot of like, how do you make it into a game? We're not really about that, but just that score and that instant feedback and recognition, I think, on their work can create just a ton of opportunity to make kids feel celebrated and make
Mhm.
kids feel supported.
Yeah.
And so that's really fun to see.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Thanks for sharing all of this. Where can people go if they want to learn more?
Yeah, our website is snorkel.app. It's snorkl.app. You can sign up for a free account there and feel free to reach out if you have questions.
Awesome. Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks, Emily.